All right. Welcome to another Friday. This time Friday morning, I guess. Normally do this in the afternoon.
Right.
But welcome
Yeah.
to another Talking Cloud. That was like being trapped in an elevator for about a minute and a
It
half.
was. I
Yeah.
felt locked in,
Yeah.
claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Um,
Does
but yeah,
seem
we're
to
finally out.
grow on you though. Like I'm like I kind of like
You
that
say
music
so.
now. Yeah. Too bad it's like a 15-second loop that you listen to over and over.
Yeah.
All right. So, crazy long weekend in the States. I'm out of here this afternoon. You're already gallivanting around North America. So let's just
Yeah.
jump right in this so people can get back to more important things.
Sounds good.
And I guess also I've been noticing my FOMO is going up now as I start to
Uh-oh.
see. I'm trying to zoom at the same time as talking. I can't do it. There we go. Um, I'm noticing more and more people talking about having fun on planes at this point, trying to get, especially
Everyone's
European
going to.
folks trying to get to Vegas. So it sounds like the the yearly migration to Vegas has started.
It's underway.
It's
Yeah.
underway. Yeah, and I guess I saw too somebody posted that so F1 was in Vegas last
Oh
week
yeah. Yep.
and somebody posted a I don't, you never know, right? But they were saying that it could take up to 8 weeks to remove everything that they put up for the
Oh my
F1
God.
race. So can you imagine now, like, it's already a bit of a nightmare to get around the strip to the different places. And now maybe you've got to get around all sorts of additional barricades and stuff. So,
That's going to
yeah,
be an utter disaster.
yeah. And you know what? In true reinvent fashion, it is. Oh, it stopped. It's snowing. It was snowing here earlier this morning.
Yeah.
Every time I've gone to reInvent, I think I've been to reInvent 5 or 6 times, I think. And every single time, this is what happens. You go to bed like so normally like would fly mostly Monday, right? Monday morning.
Yeah.
Go to bed Sunday night, you're ready to go. Weather's nice. You wake up in the morning, snow on the ground.
Right.
So yeah, I think every year we've gone to Vegas for this thing, it's delayed. So I'm actually kind of outside of the bit of FOMO. I'm all right with not having to deal with airports and probably if it's like every other reinvent, crappy weather to
Flight
try to
delays.
yeah
Yeah.
to travel in. So I'm hoping we just get the easy part and watch the videos remotely.
Fingers crossed. And it looks like they're
Absolutely.
releasing just all of the good news items in the
Yeah,
lead up to every event.
yeah,
So
I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and it's always fun to kind of speculate, because I guess we need a hobby or something. But
right.
it's always fun to speculate on what's going to happen. And maybe we talked about this last week. I kind of think this is just going to be a week long. This is all the great AI stuff.
It does feel like that
Yeah,
from what we're
I
seeing.
would
Yeah.
suspect. So that's a nice segue into this. So this is the first thing, and I put this first because number one, I think it's really cool, but I actually used this last week in the live
Oh,
stream, right? So Code Whisperer is Amazon's sort of we talked about it before, right? When Code
yeah.
Whisperer went GA, so it's like your programming companion, and you can ask it questions, and English, blah blah blah, and it spits out code for you. It's really cool. So they now have a Code Whisperer for command line in preview, but it is pretty slick. So
Is it good? Yeah.
yeah, I'll give you the story, and then I'll give you a little bit of background on this one.
Great.
Tuesday nights we do the little live, generally CloudFormation, right, on Twitch, and I wanted to be able to. I was trying to do something cross region, and I wanted to be able to take. I needed to get the ID of a file system,
Okay.
EFS, from region B, and I needed to give that to something in region A. So I'm
Sure.
like, okay, I can't use outputs because those are, CloudFormation outputs. Those are regionally specific,
Regional. Yeah.
right? So how do I do it? And I'm like, I'm going to use a stage variable. So the
Ah, okay.
first thing is, I'm like, okay, I've done stage variables in the past. What, like, how the hell do I do this? I can't remember, of course, right? So what I did was in PyCharm, I pulled up the terminal window and I
Yeah.
typed CWAI. How do I create a stage variable in GitLab CI? Enter. Blech, and it gave me the syntax. So I'm like,
Huh?
Perfect. That's great. And then I knew the command I wanted to run. Basically, I needed I wanted to run a CloudFormation CLI command to get the logical ID, not the logical ID, sorry, the physical ID of the resource. So I generally knew how to write that as well, but I think I looked it up in the documentation first. So I just went over to the CLI page, found the stuff, and bloop, away we went, right? And it worked. But what I did next was, I can't remember now. Isn't it amazing how quickly you forget? I think I had the syntax correct, but it was not giving me the output. So I asked it to help me with the correct formatting of the, I know what it was. I needed to run a query operation because I didn't want everything. I just needed the one field. So I couldn't remember how the query operation works. I asked CodeWhisperer CLI for an example. It gave it to me. I did that. And then finally, it was returning the value in double quotes, which isn't great for the actual commands that I wanted to run. So then it was awesome. I'm like, oh, how do I get rid of the double quotes? And they're like, just add -- output text. And I'm like, oh, all of these things, you know, as soon as it spits the answer to you, you're like, well, of course, that's how you would do it, right? I knew that, but it's like, not going to the documentation. I actually started to try to Google it, and then all of a sudden in my head I'm like, wait, I installed this, so why don't we try it? And it was really slick. It did exactly what I wanted, gave me the one line. You can refine your answers and stuff by just giving it, you can ask another question and kind of build on top of it. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Google's in trouble.
Yeah, I would think so, right? Like, and I think the first time we talked about CodeWhisperer, we also talked about the other website, right, where most people end up. I would have to assume that now that all these tools have effectively scraped all of their data, why go there anymore? So it'll be interesting. The other thing that was interesting in here was this little piece right here. So CodeWhisperer adds type-ahead code completions and inline documentation, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Really cool. So CodeWhisperer CLI, and I'm hoping I'm getting this correct, it was actually a purchase that Amazon made not too long ago. If you remember, maybe like 6 months ago, I've been using on my laptop for a long time a little tool called Fig.
Right.
Yeah, remember that? So Fig has become CodeWhisperer for CLI, and some of the features that existed in the original Fig haven't made it at this point into the CodeWhisperer CLI option or application. Like in the original Fig, you could make your own dot files, you could share those dot files with other team members. It was really cool. I would suspect that some of that stuff will come back over time, but obviously right now it's all about these types of coding companion tools and stuff. So I thought this was really cool and was able to use it instantly. Tied it into Identity Center. So when I logged in, away we went, right? It was really neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you just set that up in one of our accounts and tied it to your CLI, basically.
Yeah, that's it. And you're done, right?
That's great.
Mm-hmm. Now, since it's in preview, I wonder how they'll price it when it comes out of preview.
Yeah.
Right? Because we already pay for CodeWhisperer. We do the, I don't know, $19 a user per month because I wanted to tie it to Identity Center. So it'll be interesting to see, is CodeWhisperer CLI included in that cost, or is there sort of additional fees? I don't know.
I would think so. It must be, right? Like GitHub is using the same model, like they're charging per user.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they have a CLI tool, but
yeah, I was really impressed with this. So I'm hoping this week in the stream we're gonna change gears a little bit and do a bunch of CodeWhisperer work just to see how it can create some simple scripts and stuff. So I'm hoping we can use the CLI tool as we do that. We'll figure it out as we go.
Nice. It could definitely save some cycles on just quick scripting,
Quick and easy stuff, right? The next thing is, if I can, why can't I zoom? Let's try this again. There we go. Takes a couple times. So CloudFormation simplifies resource import with a new parameter for a change set.
That's good.
Yeah, I know we use change sets all the time.
Yeah,
pretty much everything we do,
constantly.
right? It's a great
Yep.
way to, well, it says it right here in the second paragraph. Change sets allow you to preview the actions that CloudFormation will take before actually doing it. So obviously something that's super important. I want to know if the change I'm making in CloudFormation, or the change I want to make, the update I want to make in CloudFormation, is going to nuke that resource before it actually does it, right? It's probably
Right.
a good thing to know about. So those are obviously super important, but now there's a new parameter that goes along with that to help you import those existing resources.
Mm.
Haven't tried it. I don't know. Have you ever used the import feature of CloudFormation?
Yeah, I've used it fairly often for kind of partition, like siloed applications that need to be deployed together, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we've definitely used that before.
Okay.
This is
Yeah. I don't
pretty
know.
interesting.
I thought again, just these. What I noticed was, remember we talked about sort of the pre-reinvent last week where we just had like 40 updates on the one day. What I noticed this week is obviously the number of updates slowed as they got closer to reinvent, but a lot of the things that came out were kind of, maybe we mentioned this in the last call too, right? It was just their quality of life. And this is another
Yeah.
example of just making something that probably a lot of people do all the time a little easier to do. Right? So
Oh, I'm reading this though, and you need to build a second document to enable to get this working. So
yeah, I don't think it's perfect, but I bet
yeah,
you if you found yourself in a situation where you're having to do these types of
yeah.
imports, this would still streamline it, right?
If you'd rather be able to, I mean, having the functionality is good.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. And then
Um,
you can decide whether or not it makes sense for what you're trying to do.
yeah, we'll have to
Yeah,
try it out and see whether the actual implementation makes sense. But
yeah, yeah. The last paragraph,
this is,
or the last sentence in the second paragraph there, reduces
yep.
manual steps and allows you to use CI/CD actions in scenarios where you only want to import resources with custom names. Yeah, maybe, right? Be interesting to see if
Maybe
they'll talk about this a little more next week.
I think I'm misreading this.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
This can delay deployments. This document allows you to import. However, this creation document requires. Okay, so so there was the ability to import those documents before,
Yeah,
and
this
they're
is
adding an API to do it now.
yeah an API.
That's
This has existed for a
okay.
long time. Like I think like years ago, this was called. Oh man, it actually had a name, and you if you wanted to import existing resources into CloudFormation, what you had to do was you would deploy an EC2 instance, install this
Yeah,
little piece of software on it, and run that, and it would go out and gather everything up. And then they kind of got rid of that and just pulled it directly into the console. And now it looks like they're adding an API layer to it so you could do it programmatically rather than, I think, still having to do a couple things in the console, if I
gotcha.
understand this, prior to this release. So,
Yeah, I totally misread that. No complaints.
yeah,
Changing that to an API, that's great.
yeah, API good. Right? And here's the next one. One day I'll figure out how to do this. There we go. And you and I were just talking about this, right? Because
Yes.
a customer of ours was saying, I need a report of all of our public facing IP addresses, and timely that this may actually make it a little easier versus having to write a script to do it. So
Yeah.
IP address manager, VPC IP address manager, IPAM's been around for a while. I've used it. We actually did a demo of this when it first came out. There's a
Oh yeah.
demo on the YouTube channel about this one, and it's pretty neat. I know you have to be really careful because it can get quite expensive depending on the number, if I'm remembering the pricing model, depending on the number of IPs that are managed by the
Okay.
IPAM, it can get expensive. But what I liked about this was free tier for IPAM that helps you get started and also helps with those public IPs, understanding what public
That's good.
IPs you're using across everything by the looks of it. So that's going to be really handy because when is it February of next year that Amazon's
Yeah,
going to
they're
start
making
charging?
that big IP address change
Yeah,
and charging for every public IP, right? So I'm sure
yeah,
everyone's seen that in their Health Console notifications and emails.
yeah.
So
My inbox is littered with like endless updates from it for like across every single account, right?
yeah,
So yeah. Anyways, I know this is coming because they won't let me forget about it.
yeah,
So this will be kind of good. So it says here in the free tier you can use the public IP address planning features within the account and the region where you've created it. Okay. Now that's interesting. When I first saw this, it says here within the account and region.
right. So it's
Hmm.
regional. It's a regional service. It looks like.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so that might make it a little trickier for the use case we need, but
Yeah, but see here. So maybe what you can do is you get single account coverage in the free tier, and then you can
okay,
go to advanced tier and then get, it says here, planning across 2 or more accounts or regions. So again, this is
sure.
another good example of making sure you understand the pricing model before you turn something on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. I really liked the IPAM tool when we first demoed it when it came out.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is overlapping CIDR ranges, those kinds of
Yeah,
things, right? And this tool gave you a nice visual representation of all the ranges that you're using. And if I recall, you could also pull in like on-prem stuff, so you had a complete picture
that's something.
in
Perfect. Yeah,
one spot. But again, then the cost of it was, I think, scared a couple people away from it because it could get pretty
gotcha.
costly. So, so there's that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
definitely worth taking a look at
Yeah,
least.
definitely. Well, especially because of the changes that are coming up, right? So if you just had
Yeah,
a
exactly.
single AWS account, it looks like you
Yeah,
could use that free of charge to get a good picture of all of the public IPs that you
to at
have.
least
And
hopefully get a list of them or
yeah,
whatnot, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Without having to write something custom, which is always nice.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, if you decide to use it, let me know how it goes because I'd like to,
sure.
was it able to do what you wanted, or did you end up having to write a script to pull all the info that you wanted?
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah. So here's another really good one. So mount point for S3. This
Mm,
is a little piece of software that Amazon released a while ago now that allows you to basically access your S3 object storage from EC2 instances like a file system.
okay,
Pretty cool.
let's
And
see.
these
Yeah.
tools have been around for a long time. Not an Amazon tool, but there's been lots of like open source tools that allow you to do this
Oh, sure.
for forever, right? And it's pretty intriguing because if you look at the cost of EBS versus the cost of S3, you're like,
Yeah.
well, why would I pay 10 cents per gig per month when I can pay 2 cents per gig per month? The problem is, and when I teach
Yeah.
AWS classes, every architecting class that I've ever taught, somebody will say, "But I could use this tool to do that." And my response is, "You
Yeah.
could absolutely do it. But here's what's going to happen: it's going to work
Yeah.
perfectly fine until the day before you go on vacation, and then it'll just mysteriously stop for no apparent reason, and you won't know why the hell it doesn't work." And I'm
Right.
speaking from experience because we used some of those open source tools a long time ago, and they're slick. They do exactly what they say they'll do, but when it stops working, it's a little weird. So this mount point for S3 allows you to do that with an Amazon supported tool, which I think is, if you've got support in place and you have a problem, you can always go to Amazon and ask about it, right? So I
That's
thought
true.
that was kind of interesting. And now, like it says here, you can cache data on the EC2 instance to
Frequently
reduce
used.
the traffic going between your EC2 instance and the S3 bucket, which would then reduce your
That's
costs,
good.
right?
That's good because I was just thinking the other problem with that S3 as a drive situation is if you're transferring a lot of data, you're doing a lot of I/O,
Yeah,
that can rack up costs pretty quick
pretty
too, right?
quickly,
So
right? Yeah,
depending on your setup, if you're especially if you're going out to the internet to do it, that would get expensive pretty quick.
yeah,
So if you don't have an endpoint set up,
yeah. The way that I always think about it is like if you've got a really busy S3 bucket that's
yeah,
got a lot of data in it with a lot of clients accessing it, you got to think about the data transfer obviously the data storage, but then also you got to kind of get an idea of the number of API calls because you're going to incur a fee for those too. So now being able to cache that data in instance store, instance memory, or on the volume is really cool.
It's useful.
Yeah, right. And you can see exactly here. Here's the benefit. Improves both the cost and the performance of your application. Seems like a no-brainer if you wanted to do this, or if you're already using some sort of tool to access S3 like a file system.
Yeah, especially if you had an application that was tolerant to slightly longer I/O times.
Yeah,
it might be worth it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd have to use an IOPS drive. But
yeah. And see what they say here. You can complete your, like as an example, you complete your machine learning training jobs faster by avoiding those redundant requests. So there's a great example of all of your data sits over here. Your training sits over on the compute.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. That'd be big for a lot of people,
that's
right?
Huge.
Yeah.
Especially, all of those open source machine learning frameworks, when you deploy them to AWS, usually they are reading and writing from the S3 bucket.
S3 bucket. So. Yeah. So you got.
I think I saw.
Oh, go ahead.
I think I saw a PyTorch news item as well that they sped up access. I think it's probably related now.
Probably, yeah.
To that, so.
Yeah. Well, you think about, like you said, you've got the compute and then all of your storage somewhere else. You've got the latency there, and if, like you said, if it's sensitive to latency, that's going to be an issue. But then also just that increased activity going back and forth, just the way it might drive some of your costs up.
Yeah.
And I like this too. I'm a fan of open source, but it's also nice to know that if you've got a support contract in place and you are using the mount point for Amazon S3, you've got access to, well, the folks who build and maintain it, right? So that's always nice. Right?
Yeah.
Open your support ticket. I don't know why I put this in here. Maybe I was doing some reading and blip. I think this is just a link to the documentation.
Okay.
Yeah. And here's another interesting update.
And I think I was gonna add this one to the list, but I saw you already had it. So.
Yeah, I cannot get this to Zoom anymore, so that's all we got. I know last week, well, this is November 20, this is just 3 days ago. So earlier in the week when this came out, I know a lot of people were really excited about it. It was like,
this is big.
Yeah, this is big, right? So being able to use key value store in those edge locations as part of your CloudFront distribution is obviously important for a lot of reasons, right? Just getting that data close to the customer and not having to come back to something else, right? In the core of your infrastructure. So I thought this was interesting. What do you think about this?
This is interesting, and it seems like it's AWS's answer in a way to Vercel, maybe, because they deploy those databases at the edge, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of trying to accomplish the same thing, it seems like.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that's how they did it. So yeah, that would make sense then, as just a response to something that somebody else already has.
Yeah. So this is going to be, I'm sure this will get a ton of use. Yeah. People will migrate over this pretty quickly, I would think.
Yeah. So essentially you've got an in-memory key value store that you can use from within your CloudFront functions. That's hard to say fast.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I wonder if they'll like I know you can still do, what do they call it, Lambda at the edge too. So in your CloudFront distribution, you've got a couple different options there. I wonder if over time that'll be,
both, right?
Will it support both? Like I'm going on based on this because they specifically mentioned just the CloudFront function piece. Maybe that's all it is possible to tie it to right now. I don't know. I was trying to see if it's got anything else in here.
Like if you're running Lambda at edge and you need access to info in a Dynamo table or DocumentDB, then I think it would make sense to replicate that out to the edge if you need that like really snappy performance.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's
well, because we were just talking about latency, right? Why deal with the latency of going from something on the edge all the way back to your DynamoDB table that's sitting in a region somewhere, right? And instead of just having it right in the distribution itself. Pretty neat.
Very cool stuff.
Yeah. And this again, like these are the types of things, right? Like they're not like these huge, groundbreaking, like remember last week, what was it, Party Rock? everybody was kind of like, oh, and I meant to share a couple links. Maybe we'll do this after
Oh, yeah.
reInvent. I've noticed people making some pretty neat applications. Like I saw somebody in Party Rock creating a solution where you could, in plain English, ask it to create a policy and it would spit out a policy doc for you. So people are doing a lot of stuff. Maybe after reInvent, we'll gather up a couple of those and add them to the chat list one day.
Sure. Yeah, we should.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, that's kind of a big thing versus this kind of stuff. A lot of these ones today are just kind of, they don't feel like they're insane, but they're just kind of nice to have and make your life a little easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the insane ones will come out next week.
Oh, yeah. So when's the first keynote? The first keynote would be Tuesday morning, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So Sunday and Monday usually end up being travel days for most people. And then, yeah, I think it would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be all the keynotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And this, I've stumbled across this one, came out a couple days ago, which is, again, timely because I'm setting up a new environment for a customer, and S3 access logging supports date-based partitioning now. So that is great for the reasons they mention in here. A lot of times what we'll do is once we have that S3 access logging set up, it's kind of like, okay, now what do we do? A lot of times people will use Athena to query those logs. And now because you've got this built-in date-based partitioning, you can improve the performance and reduce the costs of querying those logs. Yep. Right?
Makes this queries much more efficient.
Yeah, right. So I just, I'm like, oh, I got to look at this a little more just to make sure that what we're doing in the new account setup is, I'm not quite sure if it's something you have to turn on or if it's just there.
Oh, okay.
So I've got a little bit of reading to do this afternoon because I'm right in the midst of doing this. And when I came across it, I'm like, oh, I better just double check this to make sure there's not something extra line or something I got to add. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a pretty basic one. Not much you can really say about that. It's just nice to have, right?
Yep.
Oh, here's another one that's just nice to have. I know a few folks that we work with have insane ways to track all the users that have access to Identity Center and the permissions that they have across different accounts and stuff. And it's like, it's like a dark art to try to figure out how this crazy spreadsheet works on who has what and maintaining it. So this is, as we mentioned already, just having more APIs is always nice. So now you can use APIs to help you understand who has access to which AWS accounts and applications as well that you've tied to Identity Center. So I thought that was pretty neat.
That's good.
Yeah. I haven't used this yet. I wanted to see if I could just quickly before this, I don't know where this week has gone. I was like, ooh, I could just write a couple little APIs in our account just to see what this does. Cause don't have to worry about breaking too much there, but it just didn't happen. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how we could work this into some of the customer deployments and even our own environments to help better understand who has access to what.
Just write it into the SSO deploy.
Just put it in as a bunch of maybe, does it work right in the main deploys, or do you just have a bunch of sort of, for lack of a better,
like a checkup?
Yeah, like a reporting script or something that you run every Friday or last day of every month or whatever you decide to do to pull all this info for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And right here, I like this because it made me think of one particular situation. Previously, you had to manually map user and group information with their access details to build a complete view of blah, blah, blah. Nightmare.
Right.
Yeah. And the moment you don't update it one time, it's just like a house of cards, right? The whole thing just falls apart. So this, I think, will also be really nice just to, just make your life a little easier, hopefully. Yep. And then finally, thought this was interesting. So you now have in your EC2 security groups support for idle timeouts. And
Ah,
yeah, so you can see here what they're saying is, where was it?
right in the security group.
Yeah, so before
Cool.
this feature, I guess they had, it's somewhere in here now, I can't find it. Where is it? Oh, right here. Prior to today, all idle connections in TCP and UDP states were tracked for a predefined default period or
Yeah,
until they were closed. So Amazon just did that, right? And
you
now,
just handled it. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a one size fits all. So now it seems that with this update in your security groups, you as a customer are able to configure those timeouts to manage your connections.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a look at these
Right.
pictures.
Thanks, Alexa.
That wasn't even, I'm not going to say that word because I do have a couple here. That wasn't even
Oh,
the echo.
sorry.
What was that?
What was that?
That was my phone, which
What?
that was my phone, which I have turned upside down, which is supposed to be do not disturb mode. That was my phone. And what did it pull up?
What is that?
Oh, that's so weird. So it pulled up pictures of load balancing, AWS load balancing. What did we just say
Okay.
that?
We were talking about security groups and timeouts, so I guess that's relevant.
That's
So
it's kind of creepy that when you put
Awesome.
your phone upside down in do not disturb mode, it's somehow it made it into the stream today.
weird.
Okay, weird. At first I thought that was I have a Google Home sitting here too that
Yeah.
just it must feel neglected. It never gets used, so it just sits there and collects dust. I thought at first because the voice, right? I'm like, oh, that's the
Yeah.
Google voice, and I'm like, wait, that didn't light up. It was my phone. Okay, well, yeah, interesting. Somebody's always
Felt
listening.
left out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I just thought this was cool, just to give you the ability to manage these timeouts for your specific use case. I would suspect that you would probably only use these in when you're dealing with massive scale sort of situations, right?
Yeah.
Because if those connections stay open for very long periods of time, then you could just exhaust the ability to
amount of-
open new connections, right? So, yeah, I think,
You need a specific, very specific use case for this, but
yeah.
must be
Yeah.
worth it to build. So
Well, like Amazon says, right? They don't release features unless customers are asking for it. So I would suspect that this must be something that probably larger implementations want that control to have, well, better control over exactly how this is set up and working. So
yeah,
pretty interesting. I don't know if we'll run into it much in the type of stuff we do, but you
yeah,
never know, I guess.
we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
See if it comes up.
That's all I've got. That's my list of interesting things that I ran into.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's call it there. Enjoy the long weekend and eat lots of turkey, and we'll chat on Monday.
Sounds good.
All right. Oh,
All
look,
right.
I forgot. I've got my fingerless gloves on today because I'm. It goes with the story I told at the beginning. It's cold, and it's cold in my office. So yeah, I've got. It makes it very interesting to type. It's strange, but anyways. Bye for now.
Your wrist all solder up.
Yeah,
See ya.
exactly. Bye for now.